Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my special series of NISEI board member interviews. This is episode 4. I am your host, Code Marvelous, and with me is NISEI's illustrious lead designer, Greg Tung. Thanks very much for coming on, Greg.
Hi there. Thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to getting to chat with you again since Worlds. So
Y-
let's jump into it.
Yeah, I mean, it was wonderful to see you at Worlds. We had a great time. The atmosphere there was really incredible. Not what I was expecting at all. But we're not
Oh,
here to talk about that. I
yeah.
think the first thing is a lot of people in the kind of online based community may already be familiar with you to a degree, especially after last year's Worlds, or 2 years ago's Worlds, I guess I'd say. But tell me a little bit about your Netrunner story. How did you start playing the game, and what kind of like hooked you on Netrunner?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started playing the game when I opened up my tabletop board game store in Cleveland back in the fall of 2014. Uh, at the time, I had a friend who was telling me all about this, amazing cyberpunk card game, and I wasn't super interested into it. I was a diehard Magic player, and it's really hard to get into another board game. But eventually, I got to try it. I started running demos at the store, selling it because it was a really, hot ticket item, and I started falling in love with it myself. Uh, Eventually, after a couple of years, I started developing an interest in playing competitively, and I went to Worlds for the first time in 2016, placed 18th, had a blast. Went back again, Worlds 2017. That
How'd
year I
that
got.
go? Yeah, how did
It was.
how did that year go?
I'm a little disappointed. I only got second that year, but
Oh,
scarcity of resources. It's a hell of a card.
oh my god. What
Uh,
what a wild final.
but that was a surreal experience. It was absolutely fantastic. And that was really when I started interacting with the Netrunner community as a whole. And from there, I've spent the last year doing a lot of deck building innovation, working with other people. This past year, I made the Origami Cabanesa Wu deck. I made the Scarcity of Resources as Mari Newshound Rush deck that won Canada Nationals. Um, and in towards the end of the year, I ended up being selected as the lead designer for Project NISEI, which is an absolute honor.
Yeah. And so, for those of you, I just want to kind of touch base on 2017 a little bit more. Because it wasn't just that you finished second. I think a big part of the notoriety that came out of that win for you and people's support for you um, during and after the tournament came from the fact that you really, a lot of people have these decks that come out of these think tanks, right?
Right.
Where it's these big testing groups trying to distill down the best possible deck, which is what most of us do. And you came out, you didn't really have a big testing group, you didn't come out of one of these big meta think tanks, and you just had a tech card for everything, and you were just like taking up people apart for most of the tournament.
Yeah. Most of my prep for that year involved uh, just ranting at one person on StemHack pretty much constantly for like 2 weeks leading up to the event, and he just kept telling me, "I don't know, I don't know." But you know, personally, I try to be inspired by every single card that I look at that FFG has produced, and it's so much fun to do it that way. You start like playing these goofy decks and imposing like self-restricted challenges, and from that, like sometimes you find some real gems. In 2017, like I discovered that Brahmin, this AI from the Mumbad cycle that kind of went a little bit undetected, had all these fantastic synergies with the Aesop's Haley deck that people were trying to make work towards the end of 2017, and it had like these really key features that like made the Gagarin matchup a breeze. It made the rewiring Mythic Ice only matchup incredibly easy,
Right.
uh, and you can be inspired from like anything like that, which
Yeah.
is something I think that's part of like the fun of the game translating into being good at the game. You can make it worth both ways, you know?
Yeah. And on that note, you're talking about being inspired by the card pool. And obviously, everybody who's on the Nisei board should be really engaged with this game. but the lead designer perhaps especially so, right? Like you should be very fired up about cardboard. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you give me an example of a favorite Corp and Runner card?
Sure. For the record, like it changes almost daily. But right now, the two cards that I have been playing with a lot in my spare time and really been loving. For the Corp, I've been working a lot with Jeeves model Bioroids lately. If you told someone like at the beginning of the game that they would print a Haas Bioroid asset that not only like could it give you a click every single turn for the corporation, they're working with 4 clicks every turn, but you actually have some say in what that click ends up being, I think they would think like, how on earth could you even design a card like that? That's unreal. Like, look at how powerful Biotic Labor is, and that's spending a lot in a card for one instance of that. And the sort of way that they imposed how you're allowed to spend that turn from that Jeeves model by restriction has led to a lot of really creative decks, some, utilizing double and triple operations to get the ability. Some of them were, like a Stella Moon style, like install a bunch of cards strategy. Some of them were never advancing 4/2s. There's like a lot of creativity that came from the click action as a resource. And we haven't seen too much playing with clicks as a resource lately.
Right.
Because it's so dangerous, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that Jeeves kind of hit like a really interesting niche of spending, like imposing restrictions on how you're going to spend your clicks, and in exchange you're going to be really heavily rewarded with that click resource advantage. So I've been playing a lot with that because that's been really fun lately. On the runner side, I've been playing a lot with the new console Paragon. Really much weaker version of Desperado, but still very, very powerful.
Filtering's a really underrated ability, I think, in Netrunner. Like, that scry ability, basically.
Yeah, we were burned really bad by a lot of really poor implementations of that card filtration, part of the criminal slice of the color pie.
Oh, Mr. Lee?
Oh, poor Mr. Lee, poor Blockade Runner. To this day, like, I can't understand why Express Delivery didn't just put the cards on the bottom of the deck. I think if you didn't have to shuffle, that card might even be, like, close to playable.
Right.
But Paragon really, like, I think it nailed it. And it also inspires some really cool stuff. I've seen some people doing some really neat stuff with Paragon, Oracle May. I've been playing outside of the FFG legal card pool for fun recently, and I got to play with Paragon and John Masanori for the first time. Whoo boy, let me tell you, that is so much fun.
I miss John Masanori so much. You have no idea.
Yeah, me too.
That card was so good, and it just felt like this very thematic. I think we ended up talking about this card. I think there might be something going on with it because I talked about this card with Austin too.
So weird.
Oh, weird. No way. But yeah, just it feels so much like the late 80s, early 90s hacker theme where you have this guy that, he comes through sometimes, but he's also like a huge liability. Like...
Yeah, absolutely. Those like moments of tension that John Masanori produces, where you don't necessarily know what's going to happen when you start that run. I think those moments of tension, as long as they're not like game ending, those are like some of the most exciting moments in Netrunner. And he enables that. Paragon, to an extent, like that sort of like risk reward of like, do I go and dig one card deeper, or is like that easy mark on top of my deck good enough? Right. That sort of tension also like comes into play there, and I've been absolutely adoring working with that. So that's something that's kind of inspired me as I've been like looking at like the criminal card pool and like what does criminal need moving forward. Yeah. In terms of their card selection. Yeah, but those are two cards that I love right now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think also, you look at both of those cards that you picked, and we'll just talk. I'll just briefly comment. Jeeves is basically like if they took the overpowered collective identity and ground up their brains and produced one Bioroid with it, because it's just that same style of ability, but in the Corp,
right?
Who has a harder time using it than a runner would. And then for, I mean, I think the biggest thing for John Masanori is John Masanori encourages people to run as much as humanly possible, which for me is always a good thing.
Yeah, and something I didn't even think about when I selected those two cards, because I was just being, honest with you, I didn't really think about it. They're both economy cards, right? Paragon and Jeeves, and to a lesser extent John, because drawing cards is still like gaining resources. One thing I really believe in is that like the ability to develop your economy and to gain resources, whatever they are, within the game of Netrunner is what allows you to have the freedom to take whatever action you want later in the game. And that's what makes the game fun. So like, cards that make money and draw cards and allow you to do more things in the future are cards that allow you to like do all these wacky and wild things and have these crazy stories afterwards. And I think they're really fun. Yeah,
absolutely. 100%. So talk to me a little bit, Greg, about what it means generally, but also in the context of what NISEI is going to be doing, to be the lead designer for Netrunner going forward.
Sure. Excuse me one moment, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
A little bit under the weather today, I apologize.
No worries.
Okay, so could you repeat the question one more time for me, and I will answer it.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about your board position and, what it's going to mean to be the lead designer going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, being the lead designer, it's a huge honor and it's a huge responsibility. My job is to kind of try and glean what the Netrunner community is really interested in seeing moving forward with the card pool, and then looking at the competitive side of things, what does the competitive field need in order to maintain its health and to be exciting to participate in, and then use that to try and come up with this original content that's hopefully on par with this amazing card pool that has been cultivated over the last few years by Lucas and Damon and Michael Boggs. For me, I think the most important thing that I've been doing as a board member is I've been trying to get out and listen to as many people as possible. I'm really interested in hearing everyone's Netrunner stories. I'm really interested in hearing what people enjoyed about the game, what they had as problems with the game, whether you are a competitive, grinder and you've been, running the top tables for years, or, you've been sitting at a kitchen table and you can't stand anything that's popular and, you love playing your professor in custom biotics. I think that there's a lot that I have to cater to, with each, product that I'm producing. And
air quotes.
Well, yeah,
because of the legal elements of it being still something that's going to be consumed like a product, but it's not going to be sold the same way. Yeah, it's not a traditional retail product anymore.
Yeah, I call them products because I guess the other term I could use is experiences. The way in which content is produced and distributed, like timing wise, and what's surrounding it, is part of that whole experience.
Right.
And that's another thing that, as a designer, it's my job to make sure that things are released in an attractive way that captivates and excites players from, all walks of the game. And
we had a discussion because we hung out a few times during Worlds, and also the bus ride back to the airport. Where
thank you so much for shuttling me.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, just getting everybody on the Radisson courtesy shuttle, even though everybody was in different hotels. I'm excited from the conversations that I had with you, because you're going to put the nail in the coffin of the type of play that I like, but understand is bad for the game. Because I like my uninteractive slam magnum opus a million times and throw people into hell. But I understand that that's not good for the game. And we had this discussion, we had it twice, about that style of play, and I really liked your focus that you have on interactivity, meaningful decisions, and not having a super obvious choice on what you should be doing with your turns.
Yeah. So to elaborate on that just for a quick second, what I was discussing with Code when discussing stuff like the push the magnum opus button strategy is I think the game is at its best when you could have two players looking at a board state and the correct action might not be so clear as to what the player should do. And if there is a strategy where the line of play is so extremely linear that both players immediately reach that conclusion, maybe we have to re-examine that and consider what can we do to make that style of play more interesting. How can we take what players loved about what the strategy previously offered and then address it to make it, keep the spirit alive, but keep that interesting decision-making process available for everyone. I think a really cool example of that recently was we had Tag Me decks, the Red Sand Tag Me strategies that relied on God of War, just cheese into Mars for Martians into counter surveillance, close the game out really consistently, really linearly, and then they recently banned Mars for Martians, and a lot of the same cards that were being played are still seen, and the tagging strategies still exist, but all of a sudden there's this really interesting counterplay with equivocation and embezzle and all these interesting decision points and deck building choices. And I think, Liza became one of the most fun decks to play with and against, as opposed to, oh no, it's Mars for Martians, counter surveillance Liza across the table. I guess I'm going to go wait, 6 turns and then lose to a 35 access R&D.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I like it because,
cool.
Because I'm always been a big fan because I'm a terrible monster person. I played a lot of Gagarin, and I played a lot of Magnum Opus, originally Kate, but then eventually Wu, where you just put people in hell. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that there are ways to play those strategies that are really fun. I've had a lot of fun playing with Magnum Opus. I've had a lot of fun playing with Gagarin. There's like some really cool Gagarin decks you can play right now that are a little bit less literally just install every card and watch as, your opponent, cries their way to defeat. But it comes with thinking about how can we make it so that you are relying a little bit less on that card and relying a little bit more on being rewarded for taking risks and for making decision paths.
Yeah. So to that end, you've already done a little bit of it on this on Twitter, which I saw, but talk to my viewers about how you're going to be interacting with the community and how this process of the lead designer is going to play out as far as, you and the community.
Yeah, so I'm going to make a shameless plug here. Everyone should go and check out twitter.com/crithitd20. That's my Twitter. Every day or so, I make a post. And this is something that I personally do as part of my own design process, where every day, if I don't have a direct design goal, I like to challenge myself. I like to think of something that I want to be in the game, or something that hasn't been in the game that I don't think should be in, or maybe just someone had a discussion with me that made me, think about this particular concept within the game space. And I propose a challenge. Design a card that fills this particular niche within the game. And I'd been doing that for several months, and I heard all these people that wanted to, participate in the design process, and I'm not Fantasy Flight Games. I can do whatever I want. So I thought, hey, why not open this up to the community, have them be involved in the process as well? So every, day or so, you can go to that Twitter, or you can go to the email link that is on the Twitter page. I have an email link that you can use if you don't want to go make a Twitter account. And you can send me your design ideas, and I read all of them. And a lot of times these really fascinating discussions and ideas emerged that I don't think ever would have happened in the Fantasy Flight design process or even in my own personal design process.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of talented people out there with these fascinating ideas, and it's so cool to read through them every day.
Yeah, I mean, and to my own part, yeah, I really like that you're doing that, even though because of the weird way that I'm behind a firewall at work, I have a hard time participating. Sometimes, even if you're not, I'm wildly notorious in my group for not being able to design costs of cards appropriately, like when we talk about model cards. But, like, I always make this joke that I'm, like, net Rodamus because I predicted sync, like, a year and a half before it happened. Where I was just like, there'll probably eventually be an NBN identity that increases the cost to remove tags, and then it'll be like a small deck so that they can leverage the tags more easily.
Nice.
But yeah, yeah, and I think that's a really, really cool way to do it as far as way to get those kind of design ideas out of the community and also help distill down your own. Now, in addition to that, can you talk a little bit about the possibility of playtesting? I know a lot of that is still, if some of it's already in process, but other parts are crystallizing. If people want to help out, in addition to what you just articulated, what else can they do?
So I believe there are a few resources, and I would suggest going to the Netrunner Reddit to find these links. We do have open applications going on for playtesting, I believe. I'm not involved in that process, unfortunately. I occasionally oversee things that are going on, but I like to leave that in the hands of the very talented David Withington, our lead developer, and with Austin Mills, our organized play head. For the most part, I'm funneling content to them. I'm not really overseeing what they're producing. I want to make sure that if there's something that I'm really passionate about that they think isn't working, that I'm not a voice that's telling them oh, but here was my intended vision.
Right. You don't want to. You want to be getting as unbiased of opinions back as you can be.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you are interested in being a playtester, definitely look through one of the channels that we have made available to you to apply for that, because we need talented players absolutely tearing to shreds everything that I'm going to be making. Perfect. So
yeah, that's a good mindset to have. So on that note, let's talk a little bit more nuts and bolts about cards. When you think about some of the IDs in this game that you've really enjoyed, what makes an ID really fun and engaging for you? And can you give an example?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really hard to just pin down IDs specifically because I've had so much fun with almost all of them, whether they're good or whether they're bad. The thing that I'm usually looking for in an ID is I'm looking for the opportunity to be able to express myself through mechanical play. So IDs that give me a lot of flexibility in how I can attack the person across the table from me, where it's not necessarily super obvious what I'm going to be doing, or where it allows me to have the leverage to do what I intended to do in the first place with the deck. To that end, some of my favorite IDs are actually very boring. I think like Andromeda is so much fun to play with. You would not have believed, when you first read the card, like, all I get to do is I get to draw 4 more cards at the start of the game. But what that additional, what that additional card advantage at the very beginning gives you is the ability to constantly apply pressure and pressure and pressure and generate econ and econ and econ so consistently, so quickly that you can do all this wild stuff. And, obviously, like, Andromeda was incredibly competitive throughout her entire run, but I had so much fun playing, like, these off-the-wall things like Supplier Stealth decks. I had some, admittedly NPE DLR decks that I really enjoyed playing out of Andromeda. I had a ton of fun playing with like Yogg, NT data sucker decks, more traditional criminal rig decks, quest completed decks. Uh, and like it was all enabled because of that ability to just see a bunch of cards really early and
Right.
make sure that my deck was working properly. The other end of the spectrum, I suppose, is like a ID that really does something that changes the way that you view the game. And a really great idea for that, I guess, would be Noise from
Yeah.
the original core set, where all of a sudden the value of every single card on the runner's pool changes, and what the corp has to focus on for the entire game changes as well. This one central server that normally isn't a huge deal, all of a sudden you're investing a ton of resources early into protecting that archives. And
I
you
miss
better
him
hope that
so
you're
much.
I do as well. I'm looking forward to getting to play with him again in Eternal. Getting to play with the expanded card pool.
Oh man, with
I think.
Yusuf, it's gonna
Oh,
be so.
what
With
did you say? Yusuf?
yeah, the fractor that's also a
Oh my
virus.
gosh, yeah, yeah. I was playing with Noise and Yusuf and Musazi in a snake draft recently, and it was so much fun. Like everyone forgot that those were virus cards, and then I didn't have to pick a single breaker, and they're still one cost. You can sell them to Aesop's pawn shop. You
Yeah,
can just
whatever. You don't
value.
care. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
No,
so much
it's such a wild. Yeah, people often forget that him going away is what allowed those cards to be printed.
fun. Oh yeah. I had another moment where I was at one point I was testing with medium recently, just like seeing like what would it be like to play in standard with medium, and
No.
it was totally fine for a little bit, and then I remembered contaminate was in the card pool, and I was like, oh no, this is not fun.
Yeah, it immediately becomes a
DDM's on demand.
DDM on demand. Yeah. But yeah, so what's an ID? Doesn't have to be your favorite, but what's an ID that you kind of wish had landed? Meaning that you wish that it had gotten traction, or you thought it was going to get more traction, and it really didn't see its
Time in the sun.
light, its time in the sun.
I was really enamored with Chronos Protocol when that ID first got announced. Hand disruption is really something that is done extraordinarily sparingly in Netrunner, and it's kind of interesting that it is, because I don't think it would particularly like destroy the game. I think like if Scorpios didn't exist, how unfair is Salem's hospitality? I think it's actually quite interesting. It's a way to disrupt the hand without, relying on the net damage system, and and if there were reliable ways at the time of its release to have to dealt that net damage sparingly without like House of Knives, I think Chronos Protocol is an excellent like way of like using net damage as a new resource to kind of deter early runs to allow like this aggressive early pressure by the corp. But unfortunately, outside of House of Knives and Neural EMP, which both rely on the runner running a lot, there weren't really any reliable ways to get that net damage through, and a lot of the popular IDs at the time weren't really off-put by losing a random card from or a selected card from their hand because they had recursive tools for their breakers, or they were relying on something like Faust where they didn't even care.
Right, I was gonna say they're pitching their own cards. They're playing Dumblefork.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, Chronos Protocol was it reminded me a little bit of what I love about Noise, in that it takes a resource already in the game and it changes what the value of that is, in a way that introduces a new form of interactivity and tension between the players.
Yeah.
So I would have loved to have seen that card succeed.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. So, we've already talked about, I think, in part, a lot of the pieces of the answer to this question. But, what really drew you to take on this mantle? You said in the beginning, you consider it a really big responsibility. It's obviously something that you take very seriously. So, what drew you to this position? Like, what fired you up to come on board?
So, I consider myself a problem solver. I love puzzles within day-to-day life, and like finding puzzles in problems presented to you. That's one of the things I love so much about Netrunner, is one person on one side of the table is creating a puzzle in real time, and the other person is trying to dismantle or solve that puzzle. And design is another element of that aspect of life that I enjoy so much. It kind of goes back to my prompts where sometimes I have these like, cryptic or weird objectives that I'm not even sure what they're going to lead to at the end. And then by the time I go through that rabbit hole, I've discovered this really, really cool and exciting thing that has me passionate about pursuing further. So as an activity, it's extremely gratifying to solve those problems and then see them applied in real time. I personally applied for the lead designer position after some members of the Netrunner community asked me to. They really enjoyed the decks that I had been building, and they really enjoyed the way that I was interacting with the community. And I, researched what NISEI was doing. It was a group of individuals that I had a ton of respect for, and I loved what they were trying to achieve. And the discussions that I had with the initial board and the discussion of the designs that I initially proposed were very. They gave me a lot of conviction that what I was interested in doing was the right thing for the game, and that I should try and work to have my vision be part of the team. So I applied, I got it, and it's been a fantastic ride since then. I can't wait to show everyone what we've been doing so far.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see it. So on that end, you mentioned that you only really became part of kind of the wider internet family after Worlds 2017.
Mm-hmm.
You were kind of, out doing your thing with your store, kind of a smaller meta guy before that.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about some of your favorite community moments that you had related to playing this game? Could be you, could be somebody that you know personally, doesn't necessarily matter.
So I have the number one memory for me is probably always going to be the tail end of World 17, Day 2, where people still didn't really know who I was aside from a voice that occasionally participated in the FFG playtesting forums. And all of a sudden I, had my first game against Wilfie Horig on stream, where it was it cemented him as the person that would be undefeated moving into the winners finals. And then it was just back to back to back being on stream. And I felt something change in the air around me. Like I stopped being nervous about being on camera. All of a sudden, these people that I had been admiring for years, watching them play, were coming up and talking to me, talking about my misplays, like that they saw on stream, talking about how much like they were laughing and like trying to hold it in when they saw I played the heartbeat against Perkamus.
Because he was on Potential Unleashed, right?
No, he was on Rewiring Combo, and
I played right. But it also stops that.
Yeah, exactly. That was why it was in the deck, was just because I assumed that Rewiring Combo was the best deck moving into the worlds. It was so unfair and consistent that you needed something. But seeing how immediately that community accepted me and was interested in interacting with me. I played a lot of games, and the enthusiasm and the energy and the positivity that this community has, like getting to see that unfold in real time as, one new person got added to the fold, that was like so inspiring, and it was just like, it meant the world to me. And then like getting to, finish as highly as I did as, the dark horse that, no one knew, that was a really incredible moment that will never be replicated by me in my lifetime for me, and that was such a cool thing to head on home to.
We were all pulling for you. Wilfie had a great reign, and he is a fantastic gentlemen that I adore. But we could have had Full Bleed Heartbeat, Greg. We could have had it.
To be fair, like, I think I've told everyone this. I messaged FFG personally, and I asked them, you should include one copy of Full Art Heartbeat in Wilfie's Runner deck. There's more Corp cards in the Full Bleed Corp deck than there are in the Full Bleed Runner deck. You can include one extra card, right? Like, just for
Sneak
the
it in there.
for the fans, right?
For the fans, right.
Yeah. Did not happen as it turned out, but
Yeah.
it worked. It was for the best. His decks were much better to have in Full Bleed than mine were. There were a lot of really weird, questionable includes in my decks. We don't need a Full Bleed trope anytime soon.
Oh, come on.
And Slot Machine. I didn't think I'd like the card when I first read it, but have you played with it?
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not playing it on JNet right now, it's a blast.
It's a ride, yeah. So, when you think about going forward from here, your work is underway, the NISEI board is humming along.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what a lead designer does and a lead developer does, a lot of it is very much so invisible to people, right? Because what comes out to the audience, to the consumers of the game, are finished products. They don't see the revisions, the iterations, the designs. What are some of the challenges you think that in your specific sphere are going to need to be overcome to make NISEI a success?
The biggest one right now, I think, is community confidence. There are a lot of things that I am very passionate in my belief towards that affect the landscape of what can and cannot be printed. And I think that's the case for every single lead designer. And you have to balance having the confidence and conviction to make those decisions with making sure that you're listening to the community, listening to what they want, listening to their concerns when you discuss those implementations. And I've had some really interesting discussions already within members of NISEI where I've had my beliefs in the game challenged by people who, I respect very, very greatly and who I want to listen to. And I think at the end of the day, there are several ways that you could design a game like Android Netrunner that would all be successful.
Right.
So the question then is, what is the best way to do it, and how am I going to do it? And striking that balance is going to be the number one thing for me moving forward. It's what I'm always looking at whenever I'm designing a card or whether I'm finalizing a product. And just making sure that I'm listening to everyone within the project, especially myself.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And I think some of the things that we've already gone over kind of feed into that. You mentioned earlier in this interview that, you don't have to do things the way FFG did because you don't have a legal team. You don't have restrictions on, talking about things or bringing in, outside people during the design stage. So, you're obviously going to limit that and moderate that. But I think you've already set yourself up with, the challenges that you put on Twitter and the way you make yourself visible. Like when we were driving in and accessible, when we were driving to the airport and the way you were listening to me, Thomas, and Alan and the other people who were in that group that were all going to the airport, and you were just listening to people talk, and a lot of what you were doing is you were following up with more questions, right? And you were asking people why they felt that way and things like that, and that really stuck out to me. And I think you've already you're on the way there to making sure that you're getting that kind of pulse from the community as to where they're feeling, why they think that certain things are bad or not powerful enough or too powerful, etc.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons that I feel so strongly about this is we only have one opportunity to make a first impression. The first product that is going to be, consisting of cards that myself and my design team have produced, that development has refined, that organized play has balanced. If that doesn't succeed, if that isn't fun and engaging, then how much community confidence are we actually going to be able to retain? How much enthusiasm are we going to have moving forward? We can obviously we can retcon stuff incredibly easy relative to what Fantasy Flight Games could do, but that's not something I'm interested in. I want to get it right the first time. I want to
Right.
produce something that people are really excited to play with, and people that maybe said, "Oh, I don't want to play with fan-made cards. I want to change their mind." And that involves a lot of work. It involves having a really good pulse on the community. I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so we're gonna do one more fun question, and then we're gonna close out with some plugs and announcements. So this is a judgment-free zone. What card would
Okay,
you bring back from rotation and why?
Kate McCaffrey. Uh, the
Woof.
there is nothing to do with whether that card is acceptable given the current power level of cards around them. I think it's extremely unlikely that we're going to see Kate McCaffrey come back anytime soon. I have a very storied history with Kate and playing with her competitively. Uh, we're talking about IDs that inspire a lot of deck building from just a simple ability to generate economic leverage over your opponent. I I think I must have built, dozens of unique strategies, all relying on Kate's ability to generate 1 to 2 credits every turn cycle. Utilizing Shaper's ability to install stuff
Right.
on the Corp turn, and then using Kate's ability to get the discount on the Corp turn as
Right.
well as the Runner turn.
Peddlers,
I
whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. In 2016, I got 18th playing this wild Atman Temujin deck that was straight out of 2014 early. I think it was the best Shaper deck that was at Worlds 2016, even though I didn't get there. Um, in 2017, or no, it might have been 2016 as well. I was playing 2016. I was playing Apocalypse Kate, and that was absolutely incredible. Getting to play that at the Cleveland Regionals, getting second with that, and getting to explore parts of the Shaper card pool that were not popular. When Seifer came out, getting to build this incredibly degenerate unfun deck with
Ugh.
Seifer and Tapworm and Sackcon and Parasite. uh,
I
oh my gosh.
I played one tournament that I think I got third or fourth in a store champ with the Cipher Parasite Haley with the Artist Colony and clone
Yeah, yeah.
chips, and then I was just I locked it into a crate at the end of Indiana Jones, and I was like, I can never play this again if I want to have friends.
Yeah, but going back to your question, I I don't think that those decks would be nearly as potent as they were if not for the economic ability that Kate provided. And I've had such great memories, playing those decks as Kate that I'm always inspired to go back to her and see what else you can do. And also the alt art's just
Oh,
like
the painting
that
one, yeah,
that's top tier art right there.
yeah,
Uh, and I like looking at that alt art a
yeah,
lot. It's my avatar on Twitter. Uh,
yeah.
if you've never seen that one before, just really really great card. Good job with that first Netrunner product FFG.
Yeah.
Good
Good stuff.
stuff.
Hey, that's like me with my Gen Con noise. I remember when the announcement finally came out that noise was leaving the card pool. Somebody resurrected a tweet that I made in 2015 or early 2016 when the rumors first started to go around about Core 2.0.
Uh-huh.
And I said you can take noise when you pry the Gen Con alt art from my cold, lifeless hands. And I was like, this really aged well.
Yeah, and I think everyone has a card that has that sort of story-like element to it, where you gravitated towards it for one reason or another, and it ended up, being the part of so many incredible games and incredible stories that you're able to tell afterwards because of it. Uh, and that's one of the really cool things about games in general, especially with Netrunner, where you develop these like really close attachments to these factions and this world that's so captivating.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I think that's especially true for a lot of us older heads because for me, the idea Kate just encapsulated the idea of what early Shaper was, right? Before creation and control even, just this idea of efficiency, economy.
Yep.
Like
It compared to the other two factions, Kate set the standard of Netrunner can be really fun and interesting without like the weird tricksy elements. You don't have to have like a medium or an account siphon for the game to be really tense and exciting. You can play totally by the books and be on the board and just be playing as cleanly and effectively as possible using really good economy and card advantage. And the game is great just with like that and the basic action card.
right. So do you have any kind of plugs or announcements, anything you'd like to let the viewers know about before we sign off for the night?
I think we actually hit most of it in our discussion already. I would really love to see more activity happening on the Twitter. Again, it's twitter.com/crithitd20. If you're uninterested in participating in Twitter, I do check the email that is in the description of that Twitter bio. So you're welcome to send an email on there, or you can go on the StimHack Slack. And speaking of that, if you're unfamiliar with StimHack and what that is, there is a Slack channel that you are absolutely encouraged to join if you have not already. It is a phenomenal community of Netrunner players. We're talking about Netrunner all the time. We're talking about not Netrunner sometimes a little bit too much as well, but it's always really interesting and fun to participate in those discussions. And I definitely regretted not joining that community sooner, so definitely check out the StimHack Slack. And beyond that, currently all of the NISEI updates are on stimhack.com.
Yep.
We will hopefully have our own website up and running in not too long, where we'll be able to post our regular updates there as well. As FFG's license with Netrunner ends, you're going to really start seeing these announcements relating to the content that we've been working on. We really didn't want to draw too much attention to it while FFG had that license. And a lot of people have been asking, why hasn't that been happening? We've got it ready, and we're really excited to share it. So especially as we move into November, definitely keep an eye out for those updates, because I'm really excited to share my work with you and to get your feedback and to iterate and improve and develop the game together.
Awesome. Yeah. That's 100% what I think a lot of people were hoping. That's what you hope, somebody who's taking the realms of lead designer. That's the kind of mindset that we want to see. I think also I'm going to put the link to your Twitter and to your email in the show notes if you're comfortable with me doing that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So once it uploads and encodes tomorrow morning, I'll put it on there. But yeah, Greg, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me tonight. It was a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy getting to talk with you outside of the internet, the little text internet where I'm a lot snarkier. It's always a lot of fun to hear your insights and to get to share mine with you. And as always, I love the show. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, we're ride or die on this game. If you really want to do me a solid, what you should do is you should design a virus anarch that mills cards.
Well,
no, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
no.
You can't put him back in the way that he was, not with the current card pool.
All I'm gonna say is that I got a really interesting email message from Tim Bunn, and I started looking at the noise ID again, and I got some ideas. All right, I got some ideas.
Yeah, man, I'm about it. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, make sure you check out. I linked the NISEI Twitter, the Project NISEI Twitter, and also the author on stimhack.com, NISEI, so you can catch up on all the press releases that have happened thus far there. I'll put Greg's contact information in the show notes. Yeah, if you're not on the Slack, you can find information about it by searching stimhack.com. And it's a really incredible community that we'd love for everybody watching to be a part of. And everybody, until we see all of you beautiful people again, always be running.
Bye-bye.